I remember the night very well. I was 11 years old. We didn't go to bed. We went to the Anderson shelter, which was in the garden, dug into the ground about 6 feet, I suppose, covered with soil and turfs, and we went down into the shelter. We slept on bunk beds, and I remember the shelter was always wet, being, in the ground as well. It was quite something. And then about 7 o'clock, the German bombers came over to do their best. And they started bombing us. As children as well, we were with my mother and 3 sisters and myself on bunk beds. And the bombers came over. Now, they had a certain drone with their engines, and they were different to ours, so we knew they were Germans. They bombed us, and it was the whistle, and they landed with such a thud. Then there was an eerie silence before they exploded. Then the debris fell, and the glass shattered, and the occasional scream from somebody in anguish. Now, I lived near a stadium, a dog stadium, and on that night, the incendiaries fell, and they fell onto the stadium. My father, along with other wardens, climbed the gates of the stadium to release the dogs, otherwise they would have been incinerated. And the dogs found their way into our shelter. And I remember my mother saying, "Take him onto your bed to keep him warm." Something that lives with you forever, because the poor dogs were shivering with cold and fear, I suppose.
Incredibly thoughtful to think of the dogs being in the dog stadium and the fact that they would be at risk if they weren't let free, and to have that thought and then to go out and put yourself at risk in order to let the dogs run free and survive. Incredible thought at the time. Mabel then went on to tell me what she did next.
So the next morning, when we tried to go to school, we couldn't, because the craters and unexploded bombs, which, was very frightening, really, because...
Well, a lot of people would be amazed, Mabel, that you'd have woken up or just left your shelter in the morning and tried to go about life as normal by going to school the next day.
Oh, yes. And I must say, we didn't have much food in those days either. So it wasn't a hot breakfast or anything like that. It was just perhaps whatever you could get, really.
Yeah.
There was no bacon and eggs and that sort of thing. Sugar was in short supply. Tea, unheard of. Bananas, we never saw a banana for 5 years.
You were 11, Mabel, at the time.
I was 11.
You're 91 now. Does it hurt you to talk about this night, or do you think it's still important that memories are recorded for posterity?
I think it's very important. I do remember one family in an air raid shelter, a mother, father, and a son and daughter. Mother, father, and daughter were killed in the shelter, had a direct hit, and the lad was badly injured. And to this day, he walks injured, with a limp and all. Oh, it's just dreadful.
Wow.
But he survived.
Mabel Hewitt, now 91 years of age. We'll hear more from her throughout the day, here on BBC CWR on the 80th anniversary.